Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Elizaveta, and welcome to Essential Body Mechanics. Today, I want to take a few minutes to introduce to you what Essential Body Mechanics is all about, how it works, and how it can help your dance as well as your everyday life. So, what I want to start with is by telling you about how Essential Body Mechanics came to be. I began developing essential body mechanics about 20 years ago when I was teaching a lot of yoga. And I developed it as a way of creating a system of understanding the body's mechanics in order to improve people's ability to do some of the poses and make them more safe for the body. Now, with time, this became an approach to help people overcome injuries, create more flexibility in the body, and improve their mechanics for other things. Now, somewhere along the way, I began to study tango. And in addition to tango, I began to experiment with other forms of movement, such as gyrotonics and other forms of dance like ballet, contact improv, blues, and fusion. And what I noticed is that these same mechanics that I discovered in my teaching of yoga were present in all of these other forms. And as I applied them to these different movement forms, I was able to improve my own technique and help my students to improve their mobility as well. Now, when it comes to tango, and today we're going to really talk about how essential body mechanics helps in your tango technique. When it comes to tango, essential body mechanics is really helpful in creating several things. One, in particular, it really helps with finding balance. And that is really the number one complaint that I hear from my students, whether followers or leaders. A lot of people complain about losing their axis. And so essential body mechanics really addresses that head on and conditions the body into creating appropriate mechanical alignments in the body in order for you to keep your balance. The other way that it helps is that it allows you to gradually overcome learning plateaus. Now, tango can be very frustrating because of the closeness of the embrace. The mechanics have to be really precise. And when they're not, it becomes really frustrating. And people complain a lot about studying tango for a long time and not being able to progress to the next level, going to classes and taking classes with master teachers who are teaching very advanced material and complicated vocabulary. And even though the student understands how to do the movement, when they try to do it themselves or when they try to do it with a partner, it doesn't work. Unfortunately, this leads a lot of times to a misunderstanding and thinking that it's the problem with the person's abilities. They might say, oh, I don't have the talent of a dancer. I'm really bad at this. My body is not good. They might think that they're somehow defective, but really it has to do with these mechanical principles that might be somehow impaired due to incorrect alignment. So today I want to briefly introduce to you some of these principles that you will find you already know, actually. These are principles that you'll feel that they're being remembered by your body. They will be reintroduced to you because these are principles that we were born with. Our bodies are designed to work in this way. This is a natural way the body's supposed to move. And it's just that sometimes along the way, as we grow up and as we move and challenge our bodies in different ways, we develop incorrect perception of what's supposed to be happening. And there's not as much good information out there in terms of teaching us how to move our bodies well. One of the most common comments I get from my EBM workshops is people say, oh, I wish I knew this when I started dancing. I wish I knew this when I was getting into some sort of dance or some sort of movement form. So this will be useful, I think, you'll find not just for your dancing in tango, but you will also find it answers some of the questions that you might have in your daily life. Perhaps you're dealing with some sort of chronic pain or you're dealing with overcoming a particular injury and you might be frustrated with the lack of progress or the consistency of the pain and not knowing how to deal with it. So I'm hoping that this information will be helpful for you to begin to frame your mind about how to have a holistic, healthy, inspiring approach to working with your body, because one of the things that is really true about the body, and that is that it wants to be well. It really wants to be moving well. And whenever it signals to you that it's hurting or it shows a particular level of wear and tear, that is a communication to you, to your mind, to face, to confront something, to begin to understand what the body is communicating. And so the goal really is to make your body move more effortlessly with less wear and tear on your joints, so that no matter what age you are, no matter what your lifestyle is, your body is working well. And that is totally possible, and it really should be the norm. But unfortunately, with our lifestyle of sitting a lot and driving a lot and sitting at the desk and working on the computer, sometimes we get separated from this knowledge. And so hopefully this little introduction to essential body mechanics will be helpful for you to have a better lens to approach what you're doing in life, whether it is dance, sports, yoga, martial arts, or anything else. All right, so let's get started. What I want to do first is show you some basic anatomy that I think you will find refreshingly simple. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to another view. All right. So first of all, what we want to understand is that the body has an architecture, an innate structure that makes up the frame of it. So right now you're looking at the skeleton, and the skeleton has lots of different bones, lots of different parts to it. The part that we're going to be really focusing on today is the spine. And what I want to make note right now is that we often think of the body really moving from the muscles. We think of the movement happening from contracting muscle and muscle moving the rest of the systems, like moving bones. However, I want to frame it a little bit different and understand that first we have an architecture. We have a foundational frame that makes up the core of the body, similar to what you might think of the beams being in the walls of the building. So we have this really supportive structure inside. Now, that structure is supported in turn by connective tissue. So if I add some layers here, you'll start noticing these white layers being attached to the different parts of the bone. So if let me zoom in here so you can see a little bit clearer. So if we look on the back, as I add layers, you'll see this white tissue that's surrounding the various parts of the body. So these tissues are called fascia, and the fascia is the first layer that connects all the bones to each other. It is also going to be the tissue that connects your muscles to your bones, muscles to muscles, and actually fascia runs through the whole body, connecting the whole body, making it work as a whole. Now, the fascia then is connected to the muscles. And instead of thinking that the muscles are being contracted to move your body, think about that the body holds a particular alignment. The fascia then secures that alignment, and then based on that alignment, the fascia uses the muscles to properly move the body in space. So from this framework, instead of thinking that the muscles need to be strong, need to be flexible to create well-being and health in your body, think about it in terms of muscles supporting an already well-aligned structure. So what we're after here is a good alignment in the body that then the fascia and the muscles help support. So let's get back to our view here. So we're going to remove some of these tissues for now and just look at what the structure of the body is by itself. Now, as I said, we're going to be looking mostly at the spine because structurally, if you think about it, the spine is really the center of the body. Not only is it a center as you look at it from the back, but also when you look at it from the top, the spine is really the central axis, right? And when we're saying axis, what we mean by the word axis, the axis is an imaginary line that runs through the crown of the head all the way down to your feet. And so it is around this line that the spine needs to wrap around. When we look at the spine, you'll notice that it is a curve. It's a series of curves. So we have two curves that are called lordotic. So those are appearing in your lumbar spine and your cervical spine. And then an opposite direction of the curve called kyphotic curves appear in your thoracic spine. That's the spine between your shoulder blades, and your tailbone sacrum curve at the base of the spine. So these four curves are working together to create a spring-like motion of the spine, which is very fortunate for us because we walk upright, which means the spine takes a lot of impact from gravity, from having to support the weight of the head. The head weighs about 10 to 11, maybe even 12 pounds sometimes. So it's a lot of weight and it's a lot of standing upright. So in order to have a good structure for absorbing all of that weight, the spine is organized in this way, which creates a spring-like absorption through the spine, through the whole structure. So the balance of these curves, if you notice, I drew a line. So let's say this red line is an imaginary axis that goes through your spine. You'll notice that the spine is weaving in and around it. So one curve goes on one side of the axis, and then the other curve goes on the other side of the axis, and then it repeats. So this wonderful balance, this kind of S shape that keeps repeating, this is a beautiful shape that actually repeats in various parts of the body. The body really likes curves, really likes circular, spiralic types of shapes. And that is actually a shape that you will find in nature as well. So it exists pretty much everywhere. So what we want when we think about good alignment. When we think about good alignment in the spine is that we want to have a balance between these curves so that when the spine is wrapping around the axis, when it is balancing throughout its motion, you want to stay as balanced and as clearly related to the axis as possible. So along the axis, I have marked 3 places where we are going to pay special attention. And really, Essential Body Mechanics Series 1 is where we really work on understanding the alignment of these 3 points in the spine. We work on understanding it in terms of how to feel it, not just how to know it in terms of conceptual understanding, because that's really clear. You'll notice that this is very simple as a concept, but to find it inside your body is another matter. So we use different exercises and different visualizations to get you to feel that, and then we condition that alignment in different shapes so that you get a sense of how to find that same alignment no matter what shape you're in. So these 3 points are really the point of change in the spine. So as the spine is changing from one curve to the other, that place of transition is really key. And so these 3 points is where the spine is changing its direction. So you'll see the sacrum is the bone at the base of the spine that serves as a foundation for the rest of the spinal curves. And so you have a kyphotic curve to start with that then changes into a lordotic curve. And at this place where the sacrum meets the spine, this particular point is a point of transition. The next point of transition happens at the level of the T12 vertebra, which is the last vertebra of your thoracic spine. The T12 vertebra is a very special place where your thoracic spine and your lumbar spine come together, and there's always a negotiation as to how much the curves are going to articulate according to where the T12 is going to land. The last place that we're looking at is the C7, which is the base of the neck. So it's the last vertebra of the cervical spine. And it serves as a base for your neck and head. So where the C7 is aligned is going to be very important for the alignment of the head and how the rest of the structure is going to align. So in terms of just the conceptual understanding, we're talking about aligning the three areas where the curves are changing direction. So if you think of the spine as these series of curves, and just imagine one of these points going forward or back. And it doesn't have to be very much, it can be just a little bit. The moment one of these points shifts forward or back, it creates a resonance with the rest of the structure, and the rest of the spine is affected. So if the T12 slightly comes forward, it will articulate more in your lumbar spine. So your lumbar curve is going to be a little bit more pronounced, and it's going to flatten out some of the thoracic spinal curve. And that will create some imbalance in the way your fascia connections are going to be firing through the muscles. So the muscles are going to fire, perhaps they're going to still be very strong, but they're not going to be able to support you the same way. They're going to be overworking while you're not going to get the balance that you want. So a lot of times I have students coming to me and saying that they were told that they need a stronger core. A lot of times that's the instruction that's given if people are losing balance. You need to strengthen your core, strengthen your core. But really, unless your alignment is correct, no matter how much you strengthen your core, your balance is still going to be impaired. So let's isolate these points for a moment and look at what they look like by themselves. So here are the 3 points, the sacrum, T12, and C7. And I've drawn the line that runs through them. And so you can see here very clearly their angles. So this is what I wanted to show. If you look at the sacrum bone here, and we're going to look at it a little bit closer in just a moment, but for now, notice the angle at which this particular part of the sacrum is placed. So this is what we would call a neutral alignment of the pelvis. So when the pelvis, neutral alignment of the sacrum. When the sacrum is in its neutral alignment, and the neutral alignment is what we want for stability. Neutral alignment means that we are aligned properly and we can be resourceful in all directions. We can move any directions. We're supported by our musculature evenly throughout the body. So that's what it means to have neutral alignment. So in neutral alignment, the sacrum bone is turned slightly forward. So this is an anterior tilt. So it's tilting a little bit forward. However, when you look up at T12, the T12 vertebra is angled the opposite way. So they balance each other out. This, as you might expect, is once again reversed when you get to the C7. The C7 vertebra is angled slightly forward. So there's a wonderful rhythm. One bone is going this way, the other one balances out, goes the other way, and then it alternates as it goes up. So this, again, is very important. These are the types of angles that we look at in Essential Body Mechanics Level 1, Series 1. We're not only talking about how much these anchors are aligned, whether they're aligned forward or behind the axis, but also their rotation. So these two aspects of each place are very important. Let's move on, and we're going to look at, let me stop this, And we're going to go and look just briefly at the sacrum, because the sacrum is really where it all starts. So we're going to move in here, and I want to show you from different directions how amazing this bone is. So this is the view of the sacrum from the front. And as you'll see, these two places here where the sacrum attaches to your pelvic bowl, so the two pelvic halves. This place right here is called the SI joint. So the SI joint, so there's two of them. It's a very important joint to understand when we're thinking about walking or being on one leg. So in Tango, we spend a lot of time being on one foot. So the SI joint is going to be key in our ability to balance on one leg. Let's look at it from the back. And so you'll see it's kind of wedged in between your pelvic halves. And if you want to briefly pause and actually find that place inside your body, you're going to place your hands on the bottom of your pelvis, at the bottom of your spine, and look for a couple of bony parts that are protruding. So they will be pretty pronounced. Between them, it kind of gets a little soft and flat, so you can kind of put your palm at the base and you'll feel it. In the very center, if you kind of slide down your fingers kind of towards where your coccyx is, which is this bone here, you'll feel little bumps. You might feel these little bumps. So the bones that you feel protruding on the other side, these are the edges, the little points that are at the edges of your pelvic halves. And then in the center is going to be your sacrum bone. Very important bone. If we isolate it by itself and just look at it briefly, you'll see it's a triangular bone. It kind of makes me think of a butterfly or something. So it has these little wings here. The sacrum, a fun fact, sacrum actually, in its original meaning, meant a sacred bone, a holy bone. And it was considered to be a place where the soul resides. So I think it's a pretty special meaning. So we're going to look at it from the side here. Here's your sacrum. And if you look at the shape of your SI joint, so once again, this is the place, this is the shape of the joint where your pelvic halves attach. Notice again the curvature of it. It's a really interesting shape. And you can kind of see that suggestion of that S shape once again. As I said, these spiralic, curved lines kind of repeat in the body quite a few times. So in the first session of EBM Series 1, the sacrum is really where we focus a lot. We really look at the angle at which this particular bone needs to be aligned for neutral pelvis. Let's go back. So the sacrum is going to be at the base of the spine, and it serves as the foundation for the rest of your alignment. And I frequently say this, that if your pelvis, your sacrum bone in particular, is not aligned properly, nothing else will work to balance you. So meaning that if you start out with your sacrum being slightly misaligned, it doesn't matter what you do up the line, you will not have the balance that you could possibly have. You will always struggle to retain your axis. Let's look at this image for a moment. So I'm borrowing this image from the Anatomy Trains program, a really beautiful program looking at the fascia and its role in our body's movement. So here you see what happens when the pelvis is in various alignment shapes. We have a normal pelvis, and here's what I'm talking about. When your pelvis is aligned neutrally, you will see a slight anterior tilt. So it tilts to the front. Once you start looking at how the pelvis shifts in different positions, it will travel up the spine and affect the rest of your posture. So there's lots of different ways the body can adjust. And one of the most common ways the pelvis gets misaligned in our culture is for it to be slightly too tucked under. So something along these lines here or here, where the pelvis is tucked under, perhaps from the instruction of engaging your core more. So some people might read the instruction of engaging the core by tucking the pelvis a lot. Or just the habit of standing and pushing the pelvis forward as a habit. That's very common. Okay, so that is our sacrum. Now, to move on up the line, we're going to look at this guy here, which is the T12 vertebra. As you notice, the T12 is where your first rib comes out. This is a floating rib. It does not attach to the front. And so there's a way that you can find that floating rib in you that will lead you to find your T12. So if you want to do this with me for a moment, what you're going to do is, let me angle the camera a little bit to here. So if you take your hands and feel for your ribs, these are going to be your bottom ribs, and then keep going until you find on the sides, you'll find some bony, kind of sensitive points. They're a little painful. So those are going to be your floating ribs. And you keep tracking them back, keep going back until you reach to the back of your body. And you'll touch the vertebra, and most likely you're touching T12 or somewhere around there. So that's where your T12 is. And the T12, sometimes I think of the solar plexus. When we think of solar plexus, I think of it aligning with the T12. So that's going to be that area. So if we look at the T12 briefly, the vertebra, this is the vertebra, and that's the way it looks. And so as you notice, in its neutral form, neutral alignment, it's aligned slightly to the back. So it tilts away from the angle that the sacrum was at. This T12 vertebra plays a huge role in following, especially. So for followers, very common, the T12 ends up being aligned a little bit too forward when we're trying to take the embrace and be close to our partner. Once the T12 is a little bit forward, it ends up pushing the whole spine forward, and your axis tends to be kind of favoring the position to go to the front. So if you ever take the embrace and you feel like you're falling forward on your forward step, very likely it means that the T12 is a little bit too far forward. We spend a lot of time working on T12 in the third session of the series, and I give you a lot of different ways to find the alignment and different exercises to condition the proper alignment when you move. Okay, so lastly, the C7, let me reset one more time. C7 is going to be at the base of the neck. And the C7, once the 2 points below it, the sacrum and the T12 align properly, the C7 aligns very easily. However, if C7 misaligns, then it will actually misalign the other 2 points. Think about it this way. The head weighs about 10 to 11, 12 pounds. So if the head comes forward a little bit, it might pull the C7 with it. And so then once that happens, the C7 will strain the muscles along the back. And that tension can actually go all the way down the back and into your lower back. So sometimes you might have pain in your lower back. You might even have pain in your feet. And it might have to do with the fact that the head is too forward. Now, C7 misalignment is a common occurrence for leaders. A lot of times, what happens is that we get attached to the sensation of keeping the connection with our partner. So if leader takes the partner and then wants to connect with the head, that a lot of times will move the C7 a little too far forward. The other thing that happens a lot is that a lot of times people have a habit of holding their head too forward as a habit, and they might not be aware of it. Now, this is one of the most common hidden reasons for things not working properly in Tango, and it can become very frustrating. You might have a situation where a person has a particular posture pattern that's slightly misaligned. Let's say the head is too forward. And you might not be aware of it because it doesn't cause any issues in your daily life. You might have a little bit of tension in your neck. Maybe, you think you need a little bit more massage or something. But on a regular basis, it doesn't really bother you. However, when you take the embrace and you have somebody who is slightly pulling on you or pushing or relying on you for some sort of support, suddenly that misalignment means that you cannot do anything to prevent yourself from falling. So as a leader, if you find yourself struggling to not go into your toes and you feel that you're constantly kind of fighting to not fall forward, a lot of times that means the C7 is misaligned. So these 3 points along the spine serve as anchors for our alignment. Everything else in your body is going to be aligned according to those 3 initial points. Now, an interesting thing to note too is that the misalignment of these 3 points also affects the way you perceive your movement, how you perceive the geometry of your steps. For example, when you think, what is a back step? What is a forward step? What does it mean to articulate in your dissociation? The perception from the inside is going to be affected based on where those points are. And so what happens a lot is if your pelvis is too tucked under, for example, let's say as a follower, and you're walking backwards, your steps are going to be too short. No matter how much you reach, you think you're reaching far enough, but it's not going to be far enough. You're always going to be understepping. The opposite will be true if the pelvis is too untucked. If it's untucked too much forward, then you're going to overstep and take steps that are too big for you. So the geometry of steps in Tango, which really relies on these alignments, is really what the dance is made of. So when I think about geometry, I imagine if you see the 2 people in an embrace and you look at them from the top and you see the lines that they're drawing with their steps, those lines are directly impacted by the alignments that we experience internally. So lastly, to show you a little bit how this actually translates into really all other movements, these mechanics are present in every system of movement. So I want to show you some images that will prove my point. So, for example, when you're looking at an image like this of a skier, and then you look at an image like this of somebody doing yoga, you see the same principles at work. You see that the spinal alignment here, what they are going for is that neutral alignment of the spine to have all of the 3 points aligned correctly. Now, I know that his head is slightly forward on this, but if you look at what the attempt is to keep the spine as aligned as possible. Now, similarly, if you look at this pose here of the 2 people dancing tango, they're using the same exact principles of alignment to produce this. So whether you're doing yoga or you're skiing or you're dancing, you're going to be relying on the same mechanics. Similarly, if you take a look at something like a boleo, so if you think about the spiral that's going through this dancer's body, the hip opening, the SI joint articulating to produce this spiralic action, and then you look at a form like this in a baseball player, you see the same exact forms. They look a little different on the outside because it's a different form of movement, but at the core, we're dealing with the same the same principles, the same mechanics that produce the aesthetics, the beautiful lines in tango or ballet or salsa. Those are going to be the same mechanics that produce power when it comes to sports or martial arts or other forms of activities. This is another example here of a bowling player, and you see once again, to produce the momentum of the swing, what he's doing is he's spiraling, and it almost looks like a ballet to me. So lastly, I want to show you these two images that illustrate the point that I'm making. So once you have the alignment of the spine correctly positioned inside your body, this is the alignment that you're going to use for different things, whether it is riding a bike or it's running. You're going to have the same intention of keeping the curvature of the spine balanced correctly, the anchors aligned with each other. And when they do, let me actually show you. This is a really beautiful way of seeing this. If you align the 3 points, so let's go ahead and choose our 3 anchors. You have your sacrum, and then you have your T12, and then you have your C7. And let's isolate them. So those are the 3. And if you turn them upside down, so let's see if I can make this happen. You turn them upside down here, like this. Look how beautiful it aligns, how beautifully it aligns. So when I look inside here, so this little hole here is where your spinal cord goes. And where you see it ends, that's your sacrum. So if you were to look through those 3 points, you see straight down towards your sacrum, and that is the alignment of your axis. So when you have that alignment, you're able to move with ease. Things are easy, and it becomes really effortless to progress and learn new movements. It also reduces wear and tear on your joints, and it informs you how to model your movement. What is too far? How much do you need to do a certain movement? How much do you need to dissociate? These are the alignments that inform it. So to recap, essential body mechanics is all about finding the proper alignment to allow your body to move well, to reduce wear and tear, and to allow you to learn new movements, to expand your movement, to retain your flexibility, to retain your mobility. Well, for this series, in the first series of Essential Body Mechanics, we look at the alignment of the sacrum. In the second session, we spend a lot of time looking at the SI joint in weight transfer and how to align yourself properly for being on one leg. In the third session, we focus a lot on the T12 and how to find the proper T12 alignment, especially for dissociation, because as you will learn, if the T12 is misaligned, you will not be able to dissociate correctly. And finally, the fourth session, we look at the C7, which we didn't actually focus on it before, but you can find it by placing your hand on the base of your neck, and that big bump, that's your C7. So the C7 really connects more to the embrace. So we spend a lot of time looking at the positioning of the embrace and how to tell whether your embrace is correct for your body, whether it is within the range of what is necessary and appropriate for your body. So I hope this was helpful and inspiring to you. I will look forward to sometime working with you and talking with you more about this. If you're interested in the series, or if you'd like to reach out and ask me more questions, please send me a message at essentialbodymechanics@gmail.com. And I hope I get to see you soon. Stay well and have a great day.